Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where the interstellar cosmic dweller has returned. And have the years been kind to him, and does he still have a sweet tooth? Well, let's find out today in Zool Redimensioned. Zool Redimensioned was developed by the Sumo Digital Academy and published by Secret Mode in 2021. Sumo Digital was formed by some of the old Gremlin Interactive team, and the Academy program is run as a way of helping get people into the games industry, and part of this is giving them hands-on experience with developing and publishing a game, with Zool being the first one to come out of this. And as of the time of this recording, it's only been released on Steam, and I would like to thank Secret Mode for providing me a key for free for this review. I had planned on reviewing it anyway, as I've already covered Zool 1 and 2, so this just gave me slightly earlier access. The main menu opens up with this nice remix of a classic Amiga track, and if you listen closely you can actually hear the stereo separation. You might also notice that the main menu looks a little blurry, and that's due to the CRT style filter that's been applied. Now you can actually disable this in the display settings, which we'll do for now, but we will revisit it later. The rest of the options are mostly what you'd expect, from being able to rebind your controls to changing the volume levels. But there is this interesting menu that gives you a few extras, like auto fire, invincibility, and unlimited jumps. There is also this extras menu that gives you an emulation option, which launches the Mega Drive version of the game, and I'm sure choosing this will raise a few eyebrows, but I can think of a few reasons. First, the Mega Drive is a much simpler console to emulate, and for this they actually turned to Blastem, which is a very good emulator. It's highly accurate, it's very portable, so it is a good choice. It also doesn't require any firmware, as the Amiga needs the Kickstart ROMs to work, which is an extra cost as it has to be licensed from Colanto. And I don't think the price is too high, as there are projects that use them. It is an additional cost for this budget title. There is also the fact that the Amiga version was on multiple discs, so it actually requires disc swapping. Or you have to license something like WHD load, which like the Kickstarts would add to the cost. The last reason is while there was a lot of talk of the Amiga version in the trailer and in the run up to this game launching, once you're actually in-game, it's clear to see that they took their main influences from the console editions. So including this version of the game really shows where Redimensioned really came from. So let's just get into the game proper. And you actually get two options, Redimensioned mode and Ultimate Ninja mode. And this is almost but not quite a difficulty setting. As while Redimension mode is easier, as you don't have to collect that set amount of items, it does actually give you some new features, like having the double jump. And starting this mode gives you a tutorial that will take you through the basic controls, as explained by your sinking ship. But get past that and we get into the game proper, and as you can see we start in Sweetie World. Though it is missing something very important, as while there are lollies around, there are no Chubba Chubs! And by all accounts they actually did look into trying to get a deal with them, but it wasn't ready in time for the launch, so they couldn't include it. But the talks are supposedly still ongoing, so we might see those iconic pops show up later in an update. There's also one other thing that's missing, at least if you played the Amiga version, and that's the large polo mints that you used to collect. They've been replaced with what looks like a cake. Now this change was actually done for the console release, as I guess that design was a little bit too recognisable for them to simply use. But it does help indicate that this is leading into the console release more than the Amiga. This is something that we continue to see in the level designs, which were also lifted directly from the Mega Drive game, as were the backgrounds, which have these multiple layers of parallax scrolling, rather than the copper gradiated backgrounds of the Amiga 500 or the cluttered ones of the AGA. So to be honest, it is probably a better choice overall, but it would have been nice if they mixed this up with the various rounds. The controls also skew more to the console, as there's a separate button for fire, jump and spin attack. In the Amiga version, the spin attack was triggered by holding down the fire button while jumping. This could protect yourself against most attacks and could be very deadly, but it did suffer a bit when you had to jump and fire a lot, especially with the boss fights. For this reason, it was moved to its own button on the consoles, which solved one of the problems with the jumping and the shooting, but also made it more fiddly to use. So Redimensioned changed this up, as it's still activated by its own button press, but now it's more of a ground pound move. As in the original, you'd end up spin hopping across the entire level, as it was pretty much the most effective way to travel. Or you'd mostly avoid it on the consoles, as it was a bit fiddly to use. So now it actually has its own place, and makes the movement set a bit more interesting. And as we go through the rest of the Sweetie World levels, more and more of those console editions start to show up, including the flowing treacle, which thankfully feels a little bit easier to navigate than before. And you'll quickly come face to face with the first boss, which is the bee, which does feel slightly easier with the larger screen space, as you have more time to deal with its attacks. And you'll really start to feel this larger viewing area when we hit the second world, Music World. As if we compare the viewable area in the new and the old, you'll notice you can see a lot more. Now it's not just to the left and right of you as you might expect with widescreen, you also get a bit more vertical space as well. Now some of this is from the removal of the HUD panel, but there is more space on top of that. Now the sprite itself is pretty much the same between the two games. And overlaying a screenshot from the Mega Drive game at a 1:1 pixel resolution, you can actually see it lines up pretty well. The Mega Drive PAL version of the game ran at 320 by 240, with Redimensioned effectively running at 640 by 360, which when multiplied by 3 times perfectly fills a 1080p screen. So we effectively get double the horizontal resolution and about 1.5 times the vertical. Now I know some people might be put off by having all that extra space, and they might prefer it to be a little bit more zoomed in, but you know what, I actually quite prefer it like this. It does help shortcut some of the problems with the original, like running too fast and falling into a pit of spikes and other nasties. This world also has the piano that you can play, and in a nice touch, when you step on it, the music actually lowers itself so you can clearly hear the notes, which really would have been welcome on the Amiga version, as if you selected music, you couldn't hear the piano at all. And if you happen to find the notes hidden in the level and play it on one of the pianos, you'll actually get access to the secret level, which is this fun little shoot 'em up. Now these aren't particularly long, but they can be quite tough, as it will throw a lot of bad guys at you. And there's a number of these hidden through the entire game. I think about 7 in total. And by the time we get to the Fruit World, it's very obvious that this has been a remaster of the console version. Now I had been hoping for something more like Sonic Mania, with mixing up the levels more, or taking some more cues from the Amiga, but it seems the main thing we got from that version was the soundtrack, which I guess is a good thing as the Mega Drive's version of music wasn't very good. Now one issue I did have with the audio was the sound effects tended to get washed out, so they really needed to make them punchier and more distinct, or just have their volume raised a little bit, as the only one that really came across nicely was the 1-up sound effect. I know it's a small gripe, and it's one that us Amiga owners would actually have been happy to have, seeing that the original only had sound effects or music, not both at the same time. And a quick edit here, they actually released a patch when the game went live that actually boosted the volume and the sound effects. They do sound much clearer and come across much better, but I do think they still need to normalise them against each other, and try and balance it all out. So it is a definite improvement, and I hope to see more patches as we go along. It has been interesting playing this version of the game, as I never really put that much time into the console versions, so many of these level designs are quite new to me, but the further through the game you go, the more similar it starts to feel. As it seems they front-loaded many of their changes, like having that flowing treacle. But they have made a number of changes to this edition over the console, which includes the boss fights. Now Zool's boss fights were never its strong point. They were mostly bullet sponges that would fly around the screen trying to make it hard for you to hit them. And while that hasn't changed too much, you do now actually get an idea of their health. On top of that, some of the boss fights actually have an extra stage added to them, so you might think you're done, but it has other plans. And then there's one of them that has the worst trope in boss fights, in which they bring low level minions on to mess with you. Those of you that watch my other Zool videos might have spotted something with the health. It's been increased to 5, which matches Zool 2, as the original only had 3. And the hearts no longer float up the screen, instead they stick around for a little bit, then fade out after a while. Now this extra health seems to be balanced with the fact that you don't stay invincible for very long after you've taken a hit. In fact, the number of iframes seem to be very low, so it can be quite easy to lose a lot of health very quickly if you're not paying attention, particularly in the bosses. To keep things interesting, they've actually added a bunch of additional challenges for you to aim for while you're playing, and you'll find out how well you did at the end of the level. Now this includes trying to collect 3 large bonuses in each stage, trying to collect the minimum number of items, which you'll have to do if you play that classic mode, as well as trying to finish a level without losing a single life. There's also this middle badge. Now during my first playthrough I never got it once, so I wasn't sure what it was. But after a bit of poking around at the save file, which happened to be just raw JSON, I found out that it actually records your time taken. So this led me to replay the first level multiple times, where I finally got a time under 27 seconds, and that badge finally popped up. So you do have to try and beat the levels in a set time. What that time is for each level, I have absolutely no idea, as it doesn't even give you any real hints. So I'm sure this is something that the community is going to have to try and work out for themselves. Now one thing that was removed that I'm not sure if it made the game easier or harder was the arrow that used to point towards the exit, as it actually pointed directly to it rather than the route you needed to take, so it could actually send you in the wrong direction, so I think it was pretty fair to remove it. It also seems they removed the time limit, with the timer now just counting up rather than counting down from the 7.5 minutes it used to give you. Though with most levels being completable in just a few minutes, that timer was rarely an issue. Now Fairground has what I think is the biggest downgrade when compared to the Amiga, as the arcade machine was removed, so you can no longer play Zool inside of Zool. Thankfully you can still ride those strongman machines, and there's still the bouncy castles for you to mess around in. But as we're heading towards the end of the game, I think it's about time we take another look at that CRT effect. Now this is actually more than just a simple set of scan lines. As you can see, the screen has been curved, and there's also some ghosting, but the ghosting seems pretty fixed, which I don't think works too well with some of the static elements, though that blurring effect is actually quite effective. Overall, I think it's a little heavy-handed, and it would be nice if it could be tweaked a little bit, as I think there could be a middle ground between the sharp pixels and the CRT effect that would actually be quite nice. This level also revamped the boss, which made it far harder than anything that we've seen so far. Between the blood rain and the bouncing eyes, it's a much tougher fight. To help with this, you can actually enable some of those assistants. And the best for this fight might be the auto fire, which as the name implies allows you to hold down the fire button and a line of death will stretch out in front of you. And the final world is that additional one that the later releases got, Sand World. This is a desert environment which did some fun things with the colours between the levels. And outside a few of the bosses, it shouldn't actually be too hard to get here, as the changes made have made this game far easier, as you no longer need to punch the checkpoints to activate them, just being close enough activates them, and doing so will also give you some pickups that will help you get to your target amount, which in the Ultimate Ninja mode is now just a set number that you need to hit, no weird percentages anymore. Of course, the collectathon element is removed when you play Redimensioned, which means all you gotta do is find the exit, which on some levels is much easier than others. But with the double jump, it does allow you to skip large parts of the platforming and get there much faster. Sandworld was also tweaked a bit to help bridge this with Zool 2, with having Crawl show up at the very end of the game. It also has another nice addition, but I'll let you find that one out for yourself. This remaster sits in a weird zone for me, as they did do a great job in updating the game and made it a lot of fun, but it feels like the fans of the Amiga game might feel a little short-changed, as the only real part of the game that we grew up with that was used was the music, which seems odd as I tend to find Amiga owners talk more favourably about this game than the console gamers. But with cartridges costing twice as much as floppy disks, there might have been a slight difference in expectations when it came to the game, so that might account for part of it. But I will say I enjoyed playing this, as I hadn't put much time into the console version in the past. But I do wish the Amiga version was given a bit more love and care. It's not often I get to talk about a game that you can go out and buy, so today is one of those rare instances, and hopefully it does well so we get more Zool in the future, as this was actually surprisingly well done. So until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that was the Ninja from the Nth Dimension, and this is Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video, I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below, you know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.